Thanks for engaging with us. We hope that this message impacts you in some way. Email online@cccomaha.org and share your story today. We pray that this encourages your faith.
Welcome to Christ Community Church. I want to start with a quick show of hands on a few things. How many of you guys love when we're in the darkest part of the year, but people decide to light up the night by putting Christmas lights on their house as a reminder that Jesus is the light of the world? How many of you love that? I love that. How many of you expect to be giving a gift to somebody else, exchanging a gift, receiving a gift as a reminder that Jesus is the greatest gift of all? Any gift exchange people going on here in the room? Yeah, I love that. Last question, how many people have a Christmas tree somewhere in their experience? Little tree, big tree that's going on in your living room somewhere else? Yeah, tons of people have Christmas trees. 30 million people this year in the United States cut down a Christmas tree in order to drag it in and set it up in their house, a live tree. And another 60 million plastic Christmas trees were set up in people's homes to decorate their lives, because there's nothing like the amazing smell of pine or plastic to light up your house and remind you that it's Christmas time. Christmas trees, just Christmas trees in and of themselves, are a $10 billion, yes, I said billion-dollar industry in the United States every year. They've become a very big deal part of the Christmas experience. Which makes you ask the question, what's the origin of Christmas trees? Why do we even have Christmas trees? Because the truth is that the Bible story in Matthew chapter 1 or Luke chapter 2, the Christmas story, where we get the whole idea of Christmas from anyway, doesn't have any Christmas trees in it. There's no evergreens that are on site. So why would we do that kind of a thing? And more importantly, why would Christ Community Church put a tree up in the atrium that looks like it came from Whoville? And if you've been wondering any of these questions, we're going to answer all of them as our service continues. The tradition of the Christmas tree actually doesn't have its roots in Christian tradition. It has its roots in ancient Germany. When the sun was at its lowest and people were hopeful that the springtime was going to come, they would bring in evergreen trees from outside and set them up inside of the house in order to have a reminder. Spring is coming, the days are short now, but we're trusting that they're going to wind up getting longer. And it kind of gives you hope in the darkest time of the year. Well, there were some Christians that kind of decided to adopt that secular tradition for themselves and bring the greenery inside of their house. In fact, it's attributed to Martin Luther, who was a German theologian in the 16th century, that when he brought a Christmas tree in, he actually added to it candles in order to represent that Jesus is the light of the world right around Christmas time. And so it's been adopted by a lot of Christians. A lot of people have kind of taken the experience upon themselves, and some would even say, just like the Christmas tree represents eternal life or eternal greenness, so Jesus represents eternal life, and we're attributing that meaning to it. And that's fine. If that's what people want to do, I got no judgment about that. But did you know that there actually is such a thing as a biblical Christmas tree? A biblical Christmas tree. There's this prediction about a sprout that becomes a branch that becomes a tree in the book of Isaiah. Now, Isaiah lived 600 years before Jesus, but he was looking forward to this time that a rescuer, a hero, a Messiah was going to come. And he's got all kinds of predictions about that guy. One of them relates to a tree. It was the theme of the song that Nick just sang, and it's encapsulated in this Bible verse right here. Listen to this. This is Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. Now, that's kind of a weird Bible verse for Christmas, isn't it? It's not one of the ones you would expect with the mangers and shepherds and angels and all of those kinds of things, but it becomes very meaningful if you know two things. One, the lineage of Jesse, and number two, some fast facts about olive trees. So quickly, the lineage of Jesse. Jesse lived about 1,000 years before Jesus, and his fifth son was a guy named David, who eventually was crowned king. And he wasn't just any old king. King David was like the most famous, the most lauded, the most appreciated king in the history of Israel. And he started a lineage of kings that lasted for 400 years. So it's like every single one of those kings was another ring of the tree, and it all started back with Jesse's son David, and the tree got bigger and bigger and stronger for 400 years until the Babylonians came and cut that tree down. They ended the nation of Israel as a nation itself. So what was Jesse's tree now had become Jesse's stump. Are you guys tracking with me on this so far? So that's what we're talking about with the stump of Jesse. Now, the other thing that's helpful to know is a little bit about olive trees. Now, olive trees grow in the Middle East, and I've got a few pictures of olive trees that we'll put up here. These actually come from a place in or next to Jerusalem called the Mount of Olives. It's right next to the Garden of Gethsemane. And they still have olive trees today that grow on the Mount of Olives. One of my friends, Jeff Sharp, was there with me a couple of years ago, and he got some great pictures of the olive trees in the Mount of Olives in Israel. Well, olive trees, when they want to grow in the springtime, they have these shoots that come out of their branches. So they've got the thick branches, and then they have these little shoots that come out from the branches, and those shoots grow leaves, and then they have flowers, and then the olives grow where the flowers used to be on those trees. But every once in a while, there's a shoot that doesn't come off of a branch. It comes up from the ground. It comes up as a new sprout that comes up from the roots of the tree, and instead of going east and west, it's going north and south. Now, at that time, the branch or the shoot is very vulnerable. It's tender, it can be broken easily, and animals will come and they'll eat the little shoot that's coming up out of the roots. But if it survives, it eventually can become a branch, and it gets thicker and thicker. And if it's right next to the trunk, and the trunk is getting thicker and thicker, sometimes the branch and the trunk will merge with each other, having these really cool, creative, knotted trunks. So here's an example of one where this was one of those shoots that came up, and it's right next to the trunk. But probably all of these at one time were shoots that came up. Now, there's a name for those shoots in the Hebrew, and it's basically three consonants, N, Z, R. And if you were to say them, you would say it netzer. Somebody say netzer. So in Isaiah 11:1, it actually, in the Hebrew, doesn't say a shoot will grow up. It says a netzer will grow up and will wind up becoming a branch that bears fruit. But it's going to come out of Jesse's stump. So if you go back to that verse for hundreds of years, actually for about 586 years by the time Jesus comes around, the people of Israel had been hoping, praying, dreaming for this netzer to come from Jesse's stump in order to be able to rescue them. And of course, that was all fulfilled in Jesus when he came one silent night into Bethlehem, and he was wrapped in swaddling clothes and laid in a sheep's trough. He had not made just the short journey out of his mother into the real world. He had made a much longer journey across the heavens and into planet Earth. He had given up infinity to take on a human body. He had given up eternity in order to take on time. He had given up ultimate spiritual power over the universe in order to become utterly dependent on a teenage couple. He had given up all of that in order to be able to rescue humanity. Now, the angels were excited about this moment, and they lit up the sky announcing that the Messiah has been born, and in the process, freaked out a bunch of shepherds on the hillside. And those shepherds went to go and find Jesus. And then there were these astrologers in Babylon. And they were looking at the stars. And as they saw in the stars, they saw, whoa, it looks like a king is being born in Israel. And so they rented a few camels and went across the desert. and they found this little baby. But on the way, they talked to a guy named King Herod, who was not happy that there was another king that was being born in his country, and he set out to kill him. Now you think about this baby. Talk about a vulnerable, tender little shoot. I mean, all he had to protect him was two inexperienced teenage parents. They were 55 miles away from their hometown. They had just made an arduous journey, and mom just delivered a baby, and now the king was after them, trying to kill them. And so they escaped and they went to Egypt, but they were still vulnerable in Egypt. I mean, they didn't speak the language, they didn't know the culture, they didn't have Egypt skills. They were just in survival mode. But God loved them enough to tell them to go to Egypt, and he loved them enough to protect them in Egypt. And eventually, King Herod died, and God said, okay, now it's safe for you to go back to Israel. And when they went back to Israel, they settled in a town by the name of Nazareth. Now, do those consonants sound familiar at all? Nazareth, N-Z-R. It's actually the same three Hebrew letters, but add a little T on the end, so it's like Netzeret. It was the home of the shoot. It was Shoot Town, as it was called in their day. Now, this was not an accident. This was planned by God hundreds of years before, because there were some other descendants of King David who had moved to this obscure little hillside in Galilee and said, let's start a town and let's name it after that verse in Isaiah 11, verse 1. That verse about the Netzer, we'll call it Netzeret. We'll call it Shoot Town. And so Jesus was the fulfillment of Isaiah 1. He was the Netzer, and he was from Netzeret. Only God could set something up like that. In fact, Jesus later on became known as a Netzerim, or a Nazarene, as we would say it today. He becomes a shoot guy. God was putting this all together, so we would recognize this is the one who's the fulfillment of that prophecy. And it makes it much more understandable why we would create a Whoville Christmas tree in our atrium, to remind us that it's kind of a combo pack of an American Christmas tree and Isaiah 11, chapter 11, verse 1, that a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. Anybody want to order one of these next year for your home for Christmas time? We got a team. No, we don't have a team that's going to do that. Here's the full Bible verse. If you add it all together, it says this: a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a branch will bear fruit. And then it says, the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. The Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord. And this is exactly what happened with Jesus. When he was born in Bethlehem, the Spirit of the Lord was on him and with him. And when he went to Egypt, the Spirit of the Lord continued to be on him and with him. And when his family moved to Netzareth, the Spirit of the Lord was on him, that spirit of counsel and wisdom. When he went to the Jordan River and he got baptized, the Spirit of the Lord showed up in the form of a dove and rested on him. When he went around and did miracles, the Spirit of the Lord led him from place to place and empowered him to be doing all of those miracles. And when he got to the end of his life in Jerusalem, after he had done nothing wrong, lived a life of moral perfection, and done a bunch of healings and miracles, the people still put him on trial and called for his death. And eventually he did die a criminal's death. But fortunately, that's not the end of the story of Jesus. The end of the story is that 3 days later, he rose from the dead, proving that he could, in fact, come back from death. It's the ultimate comeback story. And it's actually an echo of the prophecy with Jesse. Because the stump, you thought it was dead, but with olive trees, as long as the roots are alive, a shoot can come up and start a little resurrection. So Jesus was birthed out of a resurrection prophecy, and he himself also rose from the dead so that he could promise people like you and me that we too can have resurrection power alive in our lives. That's what Jesus does. He takes shoots from stumps and he makes beautiful things in people's lives where something's been cut down. Now, I don't know what kind of a year you've had this year. I don't know if you've got any kind of dead stump feeling in your life, that it feels like there's something that you're grieving, or something that's just a hyper difficulty, or something that used to be good and got broken, or some kind of pain that you're going through. But what I do know is that Jesus is in the business of restoration. He's in the business of new life. He's in the business of taking broken things and putting them back together again. It is his expertise. And I know as a church, we're the kind of church that tries to join Jesus in that restoration in people's lives. So this January, one of the things that we're doing is we're going to be doing a 6-part series that helps people to be able to create soul rhythms that will deal with things like soul hurry, busyness, anxiety, depression, and other pieces of pain in your life. And in 6 weeks, we're going to give you tools to experience the very life of Jesus and move on in your life in a way that has soul health. Now, you may be somebody who doesn't have a church home, and I just want to say, if that's you, you are so welcome to be a part of our family and be a part of that service. If you're someone who's from out of town, like I'm not from around Nebraska anyway, that's fine, because we've got great online ministry, and you can join in every week through our online services, through our website or YouTube or other different kinds of venues. But I want to let you know that you're welcome. And if you want to experience the restorative work of Jesus, it is available for you. Now, I want to close our message here today with a kid's story, a kid's parable that I wrote a few weeks ago. And this is a kid-friendly service here, so I'm going to need a little help from kids and adults alike. So there's 2 words during my little parable that I want you to say along with me. And I'll hold up a paddle every time it's time to say the word. So when I hold up this paddle, I want everybody to say, wow. That's good. And when I hold up this paddle, I want everybody to say, ew. Oh, you did good. Like your noses were even curled up when you said that. Ew, ew, good. All right, here's the parable. Once, there was a Christmas tree who wanted to please everybody. He needed to please everybody. His mom was a knotted pine, so she called him Pinelet. He lived in a world where Christmas trees were decorated beautifully. Nobody knew why, but all were decorated. His mother loved silver bells. So the tree grew up wearing all silver bells, and his mom said, every day. And he lived with contentment, staying at home wearing silver bells for many days. When Pinelet was old enough to venture out into the streets, he found that none of the other trees wore silver bells. They all had golden stars. And when they saw his silver bells, they all said, that day he bought golden stars and wore them about town, and everybody said, wow. When he got home, his mom saw the golden stars and she said, so he changed to silver bells, and his mom said, well, then the tree applied for a job. His boss saw the golden stars and he said, we wear red berries here. So Pinelet quickly changed to red berries, and the boss said, you're hired. The tree found that he was very good at the quick change. Silver at home, golden on the streets, red at work, then purple and white and lavender, depending on who he was meeting. All the people said, and nobody said. Now, carrying all those decorations was heavy. It was exhausting to change decorations. It was expensive. Pinelet was so different in every situation that he forgot who he really was. But he was so good at changing colors. It was his best skill set. In fact, he was so good at changing colors that he decided to run for office. And he won. Later, he ran for governor of the forest, and he won again. Think of that, Governor Pinelet. And so the trees brought him all of their ideas and all of their problems. One day, all of the trees were screaming, and they brought Governor Pinelet a tree that was different. It was from another forest, grown from the roots of a long dead pine tree. It was weird. It was green, and it had no decorations. The green tree told them that they could live without decorations, that they could be free from tree pleasing. So they brought that green tree to the governor, and they put him on trial. The governor had never seen so many upset trees or so loud of an, "Why don't you have decorations?" Governor Pinelet asked. "I have come to set the trees free from decorations," said the green prisoner. "All the other trees told me that you are here to become king of the trees. Is this the case?" The new tree responded, "I'm not from this forest. My kingdom's a much bigger forest. I came to your forest to tell everybody the truth." "What is truth?" snorted Pinelet. "There are only decorations and constant changing to please the other trees." And Governor Pinelet knew that the green tree had not broken their law. And he realized that he couldn't please both the green tree and all of the trees that were yelling. So even though the tree had not violated the law, he ordered the tree to be cut down and banished. And he was. He was chopped down at the base of his trunk and thrown into the recycle pile. And Governor Pinelet never saw the green tree again. But rumors swirled that the tree came back. Not just green, but shining with light. In the months that followed, Pinelet saw thousands of trees shedding their decorations and living their best green life. And all Pinelet could do is think about him and say, you know, when I think of the good news of Jesus, I think of restoration. That Jesus came to restore what's broken in this world. First and foremost, he came to restore a broken connection with God and restore us to new life that would be found in him. But secondly, he came to restore what's fractured inside of us. This way, we become more effective when we join him in his efforts of restoration. You know, your stump this year might be tree pleasing, or maybe it's grieving a significant loss, or depression, or anxiety, or bitterness. Did you know that Jesus wants to transform all of that? He wants you to free you from all of that. And when we follow him, he does. He doesn't promise that we won't have pain. He just says he'll walk with us through the pain and change us through that. He redeems it. He restores it. In January, I'm going to teach you week by week how to be more connected to Jesus, the source of life, and in so doing, live a life that is more fully alive. I want you to know your story matters to him. You matter to him. And he wants to grab you and change you from the inside out. The real wow of Jesus started 2,000 years ago when he crashed into our time and our people and our place here on planet Earth on a silent night.
Hey, thanks again for engaging with us today. It would mean so much to us if you would just take a moment to email us at online@cccomaha.org and let us know how this service impacted your life. And don't forget to go to youtube.com/cccomaha to subscribe to our channel, like it, ring the bell to get notifications about all the other content we post throughout the week. God bless.